Mackenzie Madigan, and I'm going to talk to you guys today about genetically modified foods. Okay, so what are genetically modified foods? They are plants that were modified in a laboratory to enhance desired traits. So scientists will actually alter the DNA or remove DNA sequences of plants and crops to increase resistance to herbicides, sometimes improving their nutrition, but most of the modifications is to resist disease, pests, herbicides, and environmental stresses like frost and drought. Okay, so this picture has a lot of information that I'm going to talk about throughout my presentation. But one of the most important things I want to mention right now is that genetically modified foods, they call organisms, it's not like taking, say, dogs and breeding the best dog based on like their parents' genes. It's physically altering the DNA. Okay, so up here I have some examples of genetically modified organisms. Corn, for example, is often modified to be an herbicide resistant. 88% of corn crops are genetically modified. Tomatoes, for example, are modified to have a longer shelf life. And dairy products, cows are given growth hormones so they produce more milk. I think it's 15% more. Okay, so with genetically modifying these crops and foods comes risks. And these are all rooted in the new genes that the scientists are creating. Genetically modified foods are found to trigger new food allergies in humans. When animals were fed the genetically modified foods, some showed adverse side effects and some didn't. So there's conflicting results, so it's not very stable things. A field of genetically modified crops they all pretty much have the same DNA, so we're limiting crop diversity by modifying these plants. And if that particular field of crops, since it is almost identical genetically, if it were susceptible to a certain fungi and that fungi was exposed, it would wipe out the entire field of crops. Also, genetically modifying crops and plants has produced these super weeds that cannot be killed by products like Roundup. Some fields have to be burned, and others are destroyed by the defoliant 2,4-D, which was the main ingredient in Agent Orange. Also, genetically modified foods have led to nutrient-deficient soil, weak immune systems in animals and humans, and new diseases and viruses. And these three pictures right here are rats that were fed a lifelong diet of one of the best-selling strains of genetically modified corn. They suffered tumors and also organ damage to multiple organs. Okay, so the controls on genetically modified foods differs from country to country. In Japan, testing of genetically modified foods is mandatory. However, customers have been showing a preference for the non-genetically modified foods. In India, there is no regulation because they currently don't grow genetically modified foods. In Brazil, although the crops are banned, farmers have resorted to genetically modifying by smuggling in genetically modified foods to keep up with, say, America. They can't keep up with all these super crops and foods that American farmers are producing, so they have to try to smuggle in genetically modified crops. In Europe, due to recent scares such as mad cow disease, labeling of genetically modified foods is now mandated by the government. And in the United States, well, it's a pretty tricky situation. There is the EPA, the USDA, and the FDA that all have overlapping responsibilities when it comes to genetically modified foods, and it's kind of confusing right now they're not really sure, what falls under whose umbrella, and so being the largest producer of genetically modified foods, you'd think that America would have our crap together, but we don't. And genetically modified crops are not mandated to be labeled by the government. So, in my opinion, genetically modified foods need stricter controls. There really is no benefit for the foods. We're putting our health at risk for longer shelf lives. Also, in a time like now when our government is in debt and government shut down, we do not need to be wasting our money genetically modifying foods.